Here we have our To Cloud or Not to Cloud webinar. So without further ado, I'd like to present Mr. Richard Stout and Mr. Keith Wayland.
Right.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you. To cloud or not to cloud?
That is the question.
Or some might ask, to cloud now or cloud later?
There you go.
So that's what we'll be addressing in today's penultimate webinar of our first week of the 2018 winter webinar series. We are RPI consultants. We are a dedicated team. We have expertise across all functional areas of Infor Cloud Suite financials and supply management, Infor Cloud Suite HCM, and we have a really strong technology practice.
So our agenda for today, we're going to talk about what some of the drivers are for the increasing trend of folks migrating to the cloud, and also what some of the barriers are. We're going to talk about how the roles of the vendor and customer shift a little bit when you do this cloud migration. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about some of the differences in integrating with a multi-tenant environment versus an on-premise solution. And we're going to talk about the overall direction of cloud. And ultimately answer whether it's nobler in the mind to SaaS, to sling your arrows on a multi-tenant, or to take arms with on-premise solutions, and by doing so, to license perpetually.
And scene.
So one quick thing here is that for purposes of today's presentation, we are talking specifically about Infor Cloud Suite, and we mean Infor Cloud Suite HCM, Infor Cloud Suite FSM.
Right.
We also refer to often as version 11, the next generation of Lawson software. And Cloud Suite, it turns out, can be deployed in many ways, including on-premise, in case you didn't know. And here we're looking at the pros and cons of moving to Cloud Suite in a multi-tenant environment, which we will dive into. So with that, I will ask my colleague here, Mr. Stout, why do people look at moving to the cloud?
Yeah, why do people look at moving to the cloud? Well, there are a number of good reasons. I think the number one reason is to minimize the responsibility and cost of running a lot of servers on premise, right? And that's only becoming more and more of a reason as software becomes more complex and requires a wider variety of resources to deliver, right? I mean, think about moving from Lawson 9 to Lawson 10. A lot of customers like doubled or even tripled the number of servers that make up their Lawson environments. A full Cloud Suite solution, can take even more. And our clients have had a lot of experience maintaining those systems and gone through a lot of updates that technology-driven updates, hardware that needs to be replaced, operating systems that need to be upgraded, and they put a lot of time and effort into keeping software current, safe, highly available disaster recovery systems and fault tolerant, and keeping those systems secure. Mm-hmm. And we have a lot of clients that understand that there are other ways that they could use their time and resources that might be more beneficial to their organization rather than
disaster recovery is often a conversation that we have with our customers, and some are very forward thinking, but spend a lot of money and effort in truly accomplishing that. And sometimes IT security comes from sort of broader updates that the Lawson Infor system gets swept in. So let me ask you this: if there's all these drivers to the cloud, why isn't everybody already on the cloud?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, historically, there have been a few different factors that have slowed cloud adoption. And I think the number one reason is probably control over the application, right? When you have a software running on-prem, you control when it gets updated and how it gets updated. You can connect to all different layers, and you own those servers, you own the database, you have full control over the data. there's maybe some insecurities about taking your organization's data and trusting it with another company. Will they keep it secure? Will they keep it private? Will they use it for leverage against you?
Leverage it for their own gain. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there maybe are some thoughts about that have held back our clients. Also, we have clients that already have a large data center, are already very adept at maintaining all of these systems, and they don't see a big cost advantage in taking just one application out of that existing data center. Or maybe a lot of customizations to a system have made it not a great fit for moving to a multi-tenant, which has more of a standard application delivery.
So what is helping people overcome some of these barriers today, in your opinion?
Well, I think that one big reason is a huge step forward and evolution in what cloud really means.
Okay.
5 to 8 years ago, when we first started tossing around the term cloud in the Lawson marketplace, what it really meant was hosting, right? All it was the same server that you would be running on-prem, running in somebody else's data center. And it comes with all the same challenges of running on-prem. It's just another company was offering managed services and paying for the hardware and operating system and database licenses. But today's cloud solutions don't look anything like that at all. And if you look at the product offering from Amazon AWS, it doesn't look anything at all like what you get from installing Microsoft Windows Server or Red Hat Linux on premise. I mean, there are a lot of different advantages and a lot of different tools that Infor has been able to leverage with their Cloud Suite application that just wouldn't be feasible to do on-prem.
So these are the market leaders today, and obviously we know that Infor leverages AWS, but they're also in a position where if there are new innovators or disruptors to that market, they can later on hitch their wagon to that, right? One of, as Charles Phillips famously said, friends don't let friends build data centers. And the fact that Infor isn't specializing in the infrastructure business allows it to take advantage of whatever new developments are out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let me ask you this. In today, I keep hearing about multi-tenant. What is so special and important about multi-tenant?
Well, at its heart, multi-tenant software means that we have basically a single application that's serving multiple clients, and each of those clients has their own siloed data and their own siloed configurations, but the overall application and servers that power that application are pooled or shared together. Now, this offers a huge advantage, namely to Infor, right? Because it significantly reduces their cost of delivery. And what does that mean is they can pass that savings on to clients that in both subscription costs. So we look at, what would be the cost of, hosting a whole instance of Cloud Suite for an individual customer. That would be much greater than what clients pay with Cloud Suite SaaS licensing, as well as Infor's ability to just deliver a lot more for the money. Now, the other big advantage with multi-tenant, of course, is having a single application version that all clients share.
It's one of the big challenges for loss of development over the years, that there are so many different iterations and versions and operating systems and module subsets that every time they try to issue something new, they can't possibly mimic the 1,000 different variations in which it's going to take effect. And the more they can consolidate that footprint into a universal one, the more nimble they become in terms of developing the software and managing the changes and innovations that come forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, imagine going to a user group and knowing that everyone you interact with at that user group is running exactly the same version of application that you are and has the same set of components available to them, right?
That means that my solution would work for you,
yeah.
Right? That would be pretty amazing.
Exactly.
So one of the things I hear about is there are some fundamental changes in terms of how you work within this shared environment. Can we talk about those a little bit?
Yeah. You mentioned patches or system updates before, and how challenging it's been for Infor and Lawson before Infor to put out patches that work perfectly in every variation of on-premise systems with different operating systems, different databases, different sets of components, different versions of those components. With multi-tenant, really, a lot of that complexity goes away. And that means that Infor can move towards more of an industry standard model of rapidly rolling out updates to the application and performing automated testing on those updates prior to exposing them to customers. So in the multi-tenant cloud, your application will be updated by Infor on Infor's schedule.
That's that loss of control we were talking about earlier.
Exactly,
right?
exactly. And that's a big change, and it's a big change in mindset for people who are used to legacy on-prem software or legacy hosted software.
It's like, when do I run my testing cycle?
Yeah, exactly. So in the multi-tenant cloud, you don't do a yearly cyclical update where everybody needs to stop and execute test scripts against a test system and find all those errors and regressions and then try to resolve those and get a working patch set in test and then try and deploy that to prod. Pretty much we don't have that need for that time investment anymore. The system will be updated. It's approximately monthly. The updates are generally small incremental updates. Infor still puts out release notes, and they hold a WebEx to discuss what's happening, what's going on. And clients can opt to have what's called a pre-prod environment, which is like a test environment that gets updated in advance of the prod environment. And you get maybe about a week's notice, which granted isn't enough time for heavy testing, but that's not the point, right? It's just to get some exposure to some of these new things before they come out in the live environment.
The big advantage is you're always current.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think we've all run into an issue where it's like we have a small problem in the system, and Infor's recommended solution is do a big update to fix it.
That's probably because we let it slide behind a little bit because it was such a big deal to get there. So
yeah,
that's really nice. The other thing I hear about is there are still some significant customer responsibilities when you move to Cloud Suite. Maybe there's some misconceptions there that we can clear up.
Yeah, totally. I think the biggest misconception is that applications in the cloud administer themselves.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Wouldn't that be nice? But the reality is that there's still a real need for an application administrator role. So IT plays a big part in keeping our cloud and multi-tenant delivered SaaS application, best position for our business users to get value out of it. Some big customer responsibilities I want to highlight are, first off, user provisioning and access, right? So IT is still responsible for who has logins to the system and what do those logins grant in terms of privileges across the application. Of course, customers also take responsibility for any workflows or extensions they've added in to the application. So we're talking about IPA flows, things we've done in configuration console, ION workflows, anything like that. And then our application administrator, it would be traditionally our first line of end user support. So answering how-to questions or helping to triage issues, maybe opening Infor Extreme tickets. And then finally, Cloud Suite is typically sold with an overall data area size of about 2 terabytes. And it's a client responsibility to ensure that the application either falls within that size, perhaps by periodically pruning out or purging old data or temp data, or potentially purchasing additional size if they take a big advantage out of Infor Document Management or something like that, and it brought a lot of data in the Cloud Suite. So I know I promised,
You promised
no
no
screenshots, but I had to slip in one, and this is a Cloud Administration Console. There's a bunch of things that we can do in here. This is part of Cloud Suite Financials that we're looking at. I have the administrator role, so I can go to the administration console, and through here, some of the things we can do is we can configure our replication sets. We can access import DB, export DB, and the screen we're looking at right now is where we set up our SFTP server credentials. So when we need to move data in and out of Cloud Suite, this is sort of the other end of that link.
So one of the things that I've heard about a lot is that it's very different integrating with a multi-tenant environment than it is on-prem. Maybe we could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, totally. So Cloud Suite comes with a whole bunch of new modern ways to integrate with other applications and other systems. So, Landmark, just as a platform, offers a standard web services interface over top of every business class. So we can use either REST or SOAP standards web services to call in to pull data out of a business class, add data in, update data, basically call any method, or basically execute business logic through the application, replicating what we might do as an end user or through something like Spreadsheet Designer. Now we've got a new feature here to package those individual web services into a custom API that would be for a specific application, and that's called the Infor Ion Gateway API. So our Ion Gateway API allows us to pick some individual entry points or web services that we want to expose to an external system, put those together with a standard authentication mechanism. So we can group them and put, say, a standard OAuth authentication interface over top. And with using these industry standards, it makes it a lot easier to connect up with other SaaS systems, other cloud-based systems, or on-premise or legacy software. And then, of course, we've been talking about IPA for a long time as an interface tool, right? And Infor Process Automation, IPA, the same IPA that a lot of clients have in their Lawson environment today, that's integral to Cloud Suite, and it still makes a pretty great interface engine. Now, the elephant in the room here, of course, is that in a multi-tenant environment, customers don't get direct database access to the transactional database.
But I love my ODBC.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, those times have passed. And I would make a case that even if this access were available, I don't think it's the best way to integrate with an application, because the database is subject to change, right? Like the schema of the tables, that's something that's set by the application developer, or by Infor, or by the platform, and having an integration at that layer exposes you to potential changes in the database schema that could break an integration, where when we work through vendor-supported APIs, and we don't have that worry. And the other big problem with database access is security, right? It totally undercuts our security layer that we put in front. And with cloud-based applications, security is super important. If we grant access to the database, even if we're selective about which particular tables a user account can access, it's a totally different security model. It's not connected with the security model that we have for the rest of the application. And finally, if we look at, say, global HR, customers that have global HR on-prem today understand that because we have data at rest encryption, the social security number field in the employee table holds encrypted data. Even today, it's impossible to query the global HR database and pull out social security numbers. We have to go through the application layer to access that, and I think that's a good thing.
So what you're saying is, even though they won't play music videos on music television anymore, that's good for me.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm buying it.
that's exactly right. Dude, I'm buying you a Spotify subscription for Christmas. So let's dig a little bit more into the how do we access data through the application layer? Well, similar to in the past, we had DME queries and AGS queries. Here on the new platform, we've got our spreadsheet designer, we've got landmark queries. This is really the heart of our way that we interact with data, and we can pass that through our web services layer, and then pass that through our Infor Ion Gateway API layer. One great advantage to this is that anything we've done to extend the application is sort of just built right in to how we see that application through the API. So talking about adding new fields, or adding user fields, or even all new business classes, they become intrinsic to the overall application, and we can query those out the same way we query Infor delivered.
Right, so it's not like if I add a custom table or some custom fields to a table, and I have to use a design studio to be able to see it on any form I want to see it, and I have to find other ways to query it because not in the default schema for the Excel add-ins and so forth.
Yeah.
It just
They're just there.
itself. Yeah.
Exactly.
Pretty cool.
Now, I mean, it can be challenging having to work through the built-in relations from business class to business class. We don't have quite as much flexibility as what a SQL developer might be used to just writing their own joins. Mm-hmm. But on the flip side, we know the relations built into the application are correct, and they're predictable, and they're going to give us the results we expect. Where when we need to write our own joins, there's risk that we could end up having a join that in some cases breaks down and gives us the wrong result.
Right, just like when we want to join AP payment and AP distrib without using AP invoice in the middle.
Oh yeah,
That's a no. Don't do that.
That's a Cartesian join, folks. Stay away from that. So some of our clients have a enterprise data warehouse that powers their interface strategy, and that's great. Cloud Suite is able to play well in that environment. So we've been using replication sets as a way to push data out of Cloud Suite. And the way that works is you would go set up what business class you want to direct your replication set towards. You can bring in as many fields as you need, including fields from related business classes. You can set up a schedule. The replication set can either push out a full file or just adds, changes, and deletes since the last time it synced up. That data comes out in either CSV or JSON format and is transferred over SFTP. So it's pretty straightforward to integrate Cloud Suite into an ETL process that keeps an on-prem or maybe other cloud-based non-Infor data warehouse up to date. But for clients that don't use a data warehouse today, it's certainly not something we're saying you should do as part of Cloud Suite. But we just wanted to point out.
So for my friends out there like me that don't understand all the acronyms, I can summarize at a high level that if you have a data warehouse today, you can keep using it. It's easy to populate, but you're not going to need one just because you're moving to the Cloud Suite. Is that a fair?
Totally.
Okay, there you go. Right. Hey, so I noticed the deeper we get into this cloud presentation, the further away we've gotten from the Shakespeare motif.
Yeah, well, let's wrap it up by talking about what's coming next. Mm-hmm. And I think Infor has shown that they are very receptive to innovations in technology, and things that are out there, things that Amazon is making available through AWS that maybe seem a little nebulous, or how could these fit in a practical scenario. Infor is making a practical application out of machine learning, voice recognition, Internet of Things, and really wrapping those into practical business applications. And I think the best example of that is Coleman today. And you know,
So if you're going to deploy Coleman today, you're obviously not going to do that on premise. You would need some crazy supercomputer to do that, right?
right, it's just impossible. I mean, even if your cloud suite was on-prem, the voice recognition part, the natural language processing part would be relying on the Amazon Alexa API.
I will also add that an observation that we've made across our clients over the last couple of years is that the new functionality always comes out first in multi-tenant environments. And sometimes we find that our on-prem clients might be waiting a little bit for these things to come out a few months later. They're going to get priority. They're the Apple of Infor Zion, with good reason.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, I think we're ready to take a few questions.
Awesome.
We have a question.
Hit me.
If it is a single instance of the software, how does one apply configurations and customizations?
So configuration console is your entry point there. And anything you do with configuration console is specific to your tenant. And you could think of it as overlaying the Infor delivered code. So everybody runs the same set of Infor delivered code, but each tenant has its own configuration layer. What that means in a practical sense is, the business classes are defined by Infor, but modified by your configuration and runtime.
So I have a question for that, but by extension from that last comment, do personal configurations, you could still do that in a multi-tenant environment?
Absolutely.
Yeah, personalization still work pretty much the same way.